can we actually do to stop the gridlock and get our lawmakers working together to solve America's problems? With us now is Jonathan Miller. He is the man behind The Recovering Politician, and he's also the co-founder of No Labels, a group whose stated mission is to encourage bipartisanship. Jonathan, thanks for being with us.
Great to be with you, Crystal.
All right, so tell me about No Labels. You know, we've got record numbers of filibusters, even simple things like raising the debt ceiling are cause for near calamity. What ideas is No Labels pushing to help break through the logjam?
Sure. No Labels is a grassroots political movement. We're only a year and a half old, but we already have 500,000 members. These are Democrats, Republicans, and independents, all who agree that we need to put aside our labels on occasion and do what's right for the country. We need to be problem-solving instead of hyper-partisan finger-pointing. And we have introduced a series of policy proposals that would help change the incentive system and basically reshape the way Washington works. We've got a Make Congress Work package, a 12-point plan there, make the presidency work, and this January we're going to be having a meeting to make America work, which we're going to introduce a whole series of broader that's January 14th in New York. But the idea here is all the incentives right now are to encourage our elected officials to move to the extremes, to hide behind their partisan bunkers and shout at each other. And our goal is to change that process so that they will be forced or encouraged, or if they're well-intentioned already, they'll get productive support from their country if they reach compromise, they reach across the aisle and do what's right for their constituents.
Jonathan, I'll be honest with you, I'm going to give you a little bit of a critique here. I'm happy to get your response to it, but sure. I think you guys are doing a bit of a disservice here by framing this as encouraging this notion of, wow, if only these two parties would stop bickering with each other, start working together, find common ground. I know that's a common lament. I understand the appeal of that lament, but I think there's a very basic reason why the parties are so divided, and that is that basically to the extent there's a tradition of bipartisanship in Congress in this country, it's almost accidental. Ideology, conservative, liberal, was not synced up with party identity, Democrat, Republican, until fairly recently. So you had, back in the civil rights eras, you could have segregationist Southern Democrats, liberal Northern Democrats in one party, liberal Northern Republicans, conservative Bob Taft Republicans in that party. So you always had this sort of these funky coalitions that would emerge, and you didn't have that day-to-day polarization that we now have. We now have that day-to-day polarization, and it seems to me the more valuable message to be sending to people is not to bemoan that these two parties aren't working together, but the message to people should be to identify which party represents their interests, their principles, and their values, and then to work within that party to make their values the priority of that party, and to get that party in power so something can actually be done. That to me is the healthy approach to politics in this era.
Well, we don't believe that while it might be the healthiest approach, we don't believe that that's a practical approach right now. We have a pretty evenly divided country, and you know, I disagree that the thing that's the tradition of the country that's changed. I mean, we like to look at as recent as the 80s. We had an ideological conservative president, Reagan, and an ideological liberal speaker in the House, Tip O'Neill. They would disagree very strongly on any number of issues, but when it came time to get things done, like
Jonathan, I hate to interrupt you, but Jonathan, you had conservative Southern Democrats. That was the reason Tip O'Neill, to the extent he had to cooperate with Reagan on anything, it was because a big chunk of his party in the House we would now call them Republicans. They were mistakenly still Democrats back then.
John, let me piggyback on Steve's point and just make it a little finer, I think. The problem in Washington is asymmetrical, okay? When we say gridlock, we are obfuscating. The problem is Republican obstruction. One party has said, we put party ahead of country. We will stop the president from doing anything he wants to do, down to nominating a postmaster general. And when we say no labels, we're sort of saying both parties are equally at fault, and that is simply not true.
Well, I agree that both parties are not equally at fault during certain occasions. I mean, certainly when the party is out of power during the last 4 years of the Obama administration, the party out of power has been the obstructionist party. And I would agree completely that over the course of time, obstructionism and polarization has gotten worse and worse. So there's no doubt that during this period we've never seen such polarization, and that during this current period the Republicans are at the center of that. But just during the Bush presidency, we saw saw a whole new grassroots left-wing movement emerge that was targeted at making extreme comments about President Bush and the Cheney administration. And I fear that if we do have a Romney administration, that there are going to be a lot of Democrats who are going to be frustrated with the way Republicans have acted during this term and are going to demand that their leaders not compromise with President Romney and come up with solutions to these fiscal cliff problems that are a big issue. And so instead of dynamic, instead of it getting worse and worse and worse, we represent a majority of Americans who say we've got to come together, not on every issue. We can agree to disagree and go to the ballot to deal with some of the high-charging social issues. But when it comes to issues like the budget, where there is a center, we need to be able to put some of our arguments forward and let folks decide. And if you agree with our approach, come to nolabels.org, read what we're all about, and please sign on to our movement at nolabels.org and be part of the solution.
All right, Jonathan, thanks so much. And if I could throw one idea out for you, ways to incentivize actually getting the center to vote, not just the base, compulsory voting or incentivized voting, something that I care a lot about. But thanks so much for being with us, Jonathan.